Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the battlefield analysis of the Toretsk Front, or and slightly beyond it. Basically, the operation to basically box in Konstantinivka, which is this big city over here. This city, Konstantinivka, is bigger than Bakhmut. It's very similar to Bakhmut in its utility, strategically speaking. It's a transport hub. You can see the major highways coming out of it. There is railway lines and everything. So, of course, the railway line I don't think is operational right now. But so the operation. So in the grand scale of things, in my opinion, the Russians are trying to box up Konstantinivka in this way to force the Ukrainians into a withdrawal. Let me push this here a bit. So to force the Ukrainians into a withdrawal out of Konstantinivka without a fight inside of the city. So that's what I think the Russians are trying to do. And also, so now you know the grand picture, so it's easier to talk. So there is some developments. So just in the strategic picture, the Russians are still basically having a static line over at the Chasiv region. This is not part of the Toretsk Front. I just want to put it up front. There's all this hype about Chasivia, nothing ever happens. So, and I told you so 2 years ago. So, a lot of people disagree. Proven correct. So now we need to look at the Toretsk situation. There is some developments around here, and the biggest one is actually the fall, or the verge of the fall of Alexandro Kalinove. So this area here is Alexandro Kalinove. This is Yablonevka. And the Russian forces continue to advance from this position at Yablonevka. They have raised the flag in the middle of Alexandro Kalinove. And of course, this could also be part of Yablonevka. It's really hard to tell. Sometimes the Google Maps, is a bit hard to tell. But yeah, so the raising of the flag confirms the Russian forces consolidation of this position. Whether the Russians are still over here is unknown, because this geolocation of Russian forces in this spot is long time ago. Very, very long time ago. So we do not know if they are still there. But with this geolocation, we can roughly draw out that this entire salient here has been entirely abandoned by the Ukrainian forces, as I have expected them to do, because it's already undefendable, because it's becoming an impossible salient. Ukrainian forces have abandoned the position, probably going up north to defend the other side of the Baichok River. This area here is still unknown if the Russians have captured it. There is still no declaration of the capture of Yablonevka, so I would imagine that the Ukrainians are still here in the northern part of Yablonevka. So Alexandro Kalinove unknown as well. As I said, this geolocation was a long time ago. Russian forces may not actually be there, and this could actually still be under Ukrainian control. It is a possibility. So just to put things up front. But the fact that the Russians have come here means that Alexandro Kalinove is in deep danger. The Ukrainian forces will have to defend the highway region, the crossing around here, because there's a crossing here. The Ukrainian forces must defend that point in order to even hold a position at Alexandro Kalinove. So, and most likely the Russians will just continue their attack northward and just cut the bridge off and basically hit into the rear of the Yablonevka, the defense there. Then, yeah, render the entire Alexandro Kalinove pointless. So, and the Russians can overrun the position and goes westward, and basically collapse the entire front line in this sector here. So and you have to note that there is a big water body here. So capturing of this point by the Russian forces basically render this entire area in deep trouble, because the only area that the Ukrainians can enter will be from the other side of the river, in the lake. This is the only other side they can rotate. And this area here is super vulnerable right now, because the Russian forces last geolocated here. The other one is here. So we are talking about a distance from the water body around 2 kilometers. The other point is maybe around 2.5 kilometers, 2.7. So the Russians clearly is going to continue the attack into this region here. We have already fighting reported Klebanbik, so the Russians are definitely trying to push and cut off this area here, this crossing, this opening here. And if this opening closed, and then we have the other side of this opening closed, which looks like it's closed by now because the grow location is here, the highway is here. I mean running across and defend and take away this position, this crossing is too easy, I would say. Then the entire region here, the entire west of Toretsk, we're talking about this area here, include Shebenivka, north of Romanivka, Katerinivka, Klebanbik. All of this area here is going to be taken by the Russian forces in one fell swoop. So only this point, only these 2 points the Russians need to take. So this entire region here is now on the verge of a massive frontline collapse. Very, very close, because like I mentioned, this place cannot fall. The Ukrainians have to have secured Alexandro Kalinove. They have to defend this point, and they failed. The Russian forces raised the flag inside. This is a GG situation. So the Ukrainian forces are retreating from this area, probably is going to establish the next line of defense here. I don't think they are able to break out back in here unless they capture Yablonivka, which I don't think the Ukrainian forces right now have the capability to conduct effective operations right now. So this is going to be the defense line, and probably Yablonivka. This is probably where they're going to defend. Water body here doesn't matter. So Ukrainian forces are trying to defend Konstantinivka, largely speaking. So it's basically trying to stop the Russians from going closer to Konstantinivka. And if you look at the highway, it's really close. One highway stretch here to the fortification. This is 3.75 kilometers. And from this junction down to where the Russians are right now is 4 kilometers. It's really near right now. So the Ukrainians have to hold, because once the Russians reach capture this fortification, they will have successfully established the first war, the first blockade on Konstantinivka. So this is really serious. And on the other flank is just as bad. The Russian forces have captured Bilahora. So this capture of Bilahora is now confirmed with geolocation, and they're going to go towards Alexandro Shutine, and we have reports that they have attacked it on the 22nd, although 23rd, 24th, we didn't see any reports yet on the fighting around this sector. The fighting instead is being reported at Bilahora, according to the Ukrainians, in their yesterday's report. So the Ukrainians have to hold this position. The fall of Alexandro Shutine means that the Russian will storm all the way into the Dacha region and establish the next war. And that will be disastrous, and the Russians could potentially flank south towards Ivanopilia, cut off the road. And if this road is cut off, this road leads all the way down to the Donetsk, to the Toretsk region. And this road here leads this way down into this area here. You can see that the veins, and this is where I already said the Russians is going to close the gap, and basically cut off this entire region. An attack coming from Alexandro Shutine towards Ivanopilia would speed up this process, because if the Ukrainians are engaged in battle in this region here, for example, the Russians cross, like they haven't even captured Alexandro Shutine, they just go straight for Ivanopilia and engage the Ukrainians over at Ivanopilia. Then the Ukrainian forces in this region here, in this gap that they need to defend, will be undermanned. The Russians could have an easier time to capture it. And if this is captured, like I said, the entire Toretsk front will close, and that will be the beginning of the Konstantinivka front. Like effectively, there's no more Toretsk front anymore, because the Toretsk will be too far away. So Toretsk here, we can still call this the Toretsk front, if you want to. But if this front line is like this, then we are actually closer to Konstantinivka. And effectively, this entire area will just be the Konstantinivka front. So the situation here is just terrible for the Ukrainians. And the Russians on the western flank of the Konstantinivka is they are fighting at Yablonivka, Alexandro Kalinove. They are now attacking, they have returned to attack Stepanivka. 23rd, 24th, you can see the return of the fighting at Stepanivka. This is probably a reaction to the frontline changes over in Yablonivka, because now is the time to establish the Western Wall. So this is why they are attacking Stepanivka, potentially attacking Dovha-Balka. Tentatively, I put it as shelling because it's still a bit of a distance based on our front line. But let's say if the Russian front line moves further forward, then I will imagine that it's an attack directly on Dovha-Balka. And as I mentioned, the aim would be this fortification to establish the southwestern wall. The attack to Dovha-Balka will establish the western wall, probably along the water body here. They don't have to go very close to the city. A bit of a distance will work as well. And then fighting at Rusinya, Patavka, Popivia. This is like a separate operation. This one heads to a different area. This is unrelated. This is unrelated to the Konstantinivka battle. So the operation on the Konstantinivka, I just want to show you the western wall. So this is the pond. How the hell is this called a pond? This is so big. So the Russians just need to establish a gap here, the control here, and capture Dovha-Balka, and they will have their wall. They will have this wall here. This will be the western wall to block off the Ukrainians and to put pressure on them. So that's the line here, and then it will stretch on to this fortification, and then probably north of the lake, and then cut off this highway, and then cut off at this is what Alessandro Shutini, and the Russians will want to capture Proteshny and establish the eastern wall and the fortifications of Chasivia. So once the south is all taken by the Russian forces, then I think the major push at Chasivia will happen. Tentatively, it's just no point. It's just not the right time. And when they have all of this, the Russians can then go for the lake, capturing Novodimitrivka, Novoloshavka, and then start to close up the gap in the north. The way to force the Ukrainians out is to encircle them, threaten the encirclement. So the walls are very important because the walls will set up the stage for the encirclement. And if I'm going to pull this up a bit, and you can see what the Russian forces will need to do: overrun Chasivia, go for Stinky, go for Izhevsky, establish the security, and then the pressure would then be on Oleksivo or Druskivka. Similarly, from Dovha-Balka, I don't think there's much defenses here. They can go for Mykolaipilia and then go for Oleksivo, Druskivka. Similarly, the main idea is to cut off this vital road in the north of Konstantinivka. This will force the Ukrainian withdrawal. But the walls must be established first to force the Ukrainians into unable to do anything in Konstantinivka. Because once the wall is set up, then Konstantinivka will lose its value as a transport hub. There is no point to it. It will just become another frontline city, and the encirclement will just mean that the troops will be just taken out of battles. You don't have to storm the city. You can encircle them and just leave them there. They can't do much things. And just by leaving them inside there, even if they are armed, they are still alive, they can eat, they can stay there for months, but the front line can just continue to move forward. Similar to what happened in Mariupol. So in Mariupol, so just to establish why that's the case, why it doesn't matter if they're encircled, then just leave them there. The Azov battalion and some of the other Ukrainian forces was at Mariupol. They're stuck here. The Russian forces continue to storm northward, and they got encircled. The entire force at Mariupol becomes irrelevant to the rest of the war. So they are just out of action, totally out of action. So the similar situation can happen over Constantinople. As long as the war is established and they cut off and circle it, the Ukrainian forces stuck inside of Constantinople, they are out of the war. They will be utterly useless, and that will mean a chunk of the Ukrainian forces is totally out of their battle of order. So this is the idea that I think the Russians are developing. So this is, I think it's not a bad plan. Because I said so. No, so it's a good plan. Whether Ukrainians can stop it, no, it remains to be seen. So let me just a quick battlefield analysis about the situation at Constantinople. Things are moving very quickly, and I think, like I said just now, the big thing to watch is these two gaps. The gaps, I will call this the Alexandro-Kalinove gap, and this one is the Kleban-Big gap. These two gaps will decide the Toretsk Front, the future of the Toretsk Front. And if the Russians take both, which is the one at Alexandro Kalinove is on the verge of capture, and if the Russians also take Kleban-Big, then the battle of Toretsk will be over, and the Toretsk Front will collapse entirely. So anyway, thank you for watching. Happy birthday to you if your birthday today, and check out the Thai-Cambodian conflict, the day one of the SITREP, for day one. Hopefully this will not become a big war, but I put out basically the analysis or this explanation to the entire picture over at this conflict and what had happened. And I think that the battle will continue tomorrow, but not sure if they will continue for a longer time to come, because ASEAN countries tend to be very reserved. But we shall see, because this time around is getting a bit serious. So check it out. I think it's a good video you should watch, and I'll see you guys in the next update.